And then they would give me that example that you just gave about, oh, I don't remember things that happened recently, but I remember things that happened in the past. Have you heard of those things before? Now, what I want you to remember is that, consider this. Recent events, things that happened 50 years ago. Which one belongs to long-term memory?
50 years ago.
How about the recent events?
As long as they're not within like the past minute. Like.
Thank you.
Or it's not something you manipulated or anything like that.
What I want to say is that even though when we talk to popular belief, and when we hear the term pop psychology, when we hear the term short-term memory, a lot of times people would think that, oh, recent things, short-term, 50 years ago, long-term. But at least when we look at these memory models, what we're saying is that when it comes to long-term memory, anything that has gone through rehearsal elaboration that is now part of your memory is a long-term memory. So even things like what I said today at 2 o'clock, which is about an hour ago, that's already, if you do happen to remember it, that is part of your long-term memory already. That's not short-term memory. Short-term memory is short, and we're talking about a matter of seconds. Sensory memory probably even shorter. Long-term memory is what get passed down, processed. You either get it or you lose it. And by the way, recent event, what I said at 2 o'clock today versus 50 years ago on the same day, or maybe high school graduation, okay? What type of memory do you think that is? Episodic or semantic? Just by looking at those two words, if you have never come across these things before.
Would you say semantic memory and the graduation is absolute memory?
Okay.
Or
Can you explain a little bit more why you think that is the case? Or can somebody help her out? You can also have a different opinion.
because for the graduation, you probably just remember the location, the images, but not exactly the words or the conversation you had.
Okay. That's one way to look at it. Thank you. Anybody else have a different opinion or disagree?
Just based on its personal relevance to you, it would be episodic.
Okay. All right. So that's another way to look at it as well. Thank you. So what do you mean by personal relevance?
Since it's your high school graduation, it's something that you would put more emphasis on in your memory or in the way that you stored it. I'm not sure.
And it might be more emotional.
Okay. Those are very interesting concepts. I think Dr. Knight will come back and talk about, he will probably talk about emotion and memory as well later on. So I'm not going to touch upon those. But I heard some really great points earlier. Episodic memory, usually it's specific. It's specific to a place, a time, an event. So an episode, right? What I said today, depending on how you look at it, if we're talking about me talking at 2 o'clock, that can be a piece of episodic memory as well. Because it's a specific time, a specific location, something happened, I said something. If we're talking about the content in the sense that we're talking about general knowledge, then, or word meaning. For example, I defined terms like recognition. I defined terms like recall. And you happen to remember the meaning of those words. Those, typically people would consider those as semantic memory. It's more general. It's broad category. It's very interesting because, once again, there are age differences. And what do you think? Which one do older adults tend to do worse? If you give them...
To do worse or better?
Worse.
Episodic.
Okay, and why is that the case?
because I think that the general knowledge and content and word meaning builds up over your life. And it also is less specific than a particular event.
Semantics is also going to be more utilitarian because, I mean, you might remember one time, you got hit by a car. But you get hit by a car, that's not going to be something you're going to remember every day, whereas semantics is going to be, how do I tie my shoes? How do I make breakfast? Things that seems a little more useful for you to remember.
So in a way, it also reminds me of the Stein paper when they talk about cognitive engagement and, utilizing things and so on, strategies, right? Yeah, that might be one reason why there's also a difference. So yes, your classmates are right. Episodic memory tends to become worse. It tends to decline as we age. And there are many studies looking at the age-related decline on standardized measures. So for example, you give people a word list. That's the most typical thing they would do, unfortunately. They don't really ask you for something else. Word list, or say a story. They give you the story, and then after 15 minutes, they ask you to repeat the story to them, and so on. Or human faces. They show you faces of 24 different faces. They try to make you memorize them. In general, older adults tend not to do as well. Now, they also show, we also found in some longitudinal data that, not we, but some other people actually, even if we consider practice and also educational attainment, when those things are statistically adjusted, the measures of episodic memory still seems to show a decline. But the thing is that it's largely unaffected by aging up until the age of maybe 60, I would say. So clearly something else could be going on. Something else may foster episodic memory, make it better. It could be because, like one of you said earlier, it may be because recent episodic memory versus really long-term episodic memory. The really long-term one people tend to remember better because maybe they encode them better when they were younger. That's also a possibility. Semantic memory, I think we already talked about that. And what was the conclusion again? Remind me, I don't remember. Did we say that there's a huge age difference, or that wasn't?
Less.
Okay.
Did you say that when you said that was not affected till age 60, you were talking about episodic or semantic?
Episodic.
We're talking about episodic. Okay.
We're talking about if we give them standardized measures.
Right. But we said for semantic, which is
So what did we say about semantic memory?
that it didn't worsen with age.
Pardon me?
That it did not get worse with age.
Okay, it did not get worse. Yeah. If we look at cross-sectional data and also longitudinal studies, it seems to suggest that actually semantic memory, especially verbal, word meaning, knowledge about words, vocabulary. Like one of the chapters we read, either chapter 14 or 15, they said it seems like people still tend to remember word meanings relatively well. So it's relatively stable across the lifespan. People don't tend to forget what the words mean and so on. Until they're really old. I think I've seen at least one study suggesting that by age 90 that might be a drop. But in general, I guess the take-home message here when we talk about episodic versus semantic is that there are way more problems with episodic memory than semantic. Yes?
Do they show differences, like age-related differences after they control for emotion? Because doesn't emotion tend to be better regulated as you age?
Mm-hmm.
And so if episodic memory is tied to emotion, that it could be a function of emotion that's causing it. They're not experiencing big,